The woman who could ground a global airline with a single phone call was currently fighting for an armrest in seat 38B. She was worth more than the Boeing 777 she was sitting in, more than the entire airline that owned it. Yet she was being squeezed between a snoring salesman and a window that refused to fully close. No one knew that the young black woman in the worn-out Stanford hoodie and yoga pants was Anna Sterling. And no one knew that the casual act of prejudice she'd just endured at the boarding gate hadn't just cost her an upgrade. It was about to set in motion a corporate catastrophe of epic proportions. This isn't just a story about mistaken identity. It's a story about what happens when the facade of politeness is stripped away, revealing the ugly truth beneath and the devastating price of underestimating the quietest person in the room. The air in the Tom Bradley International Terminal at LAX was a familiar cocktail of anxiety, excitement, and stale coffee. It was a place of frantic energy, a microcosm of a world in constant motion. But for Anna Sterling, it was just a corridor between two phases of her life, the grueling, code-filled 3-day sprint she'd just completed in her Silicon Valley headquarters, and the critical company-defining negotiations awaiting her in London. At 26, Anna was an anomaly wrapped in an enigma. She was the sole founder, CEO, and chief architect of Nexus Logics, a company that had, in less than 4 years, revolutionized global supply chain management through predictive AI. She was the kind of genius that publications like Wired and Forbes wrote breathless profiles about, speculating on her net worth, which they conservatively estimated at around $14 billion. She was to the tech world a titan. To Cynthia Davenport, the senior gate agent for Apex Global Airlines Flight 110 to London, Heathrow Anna was just a problem. Anna stood patiently at the counter, her worn leather backpack slung over one shoulder. She wore no makeup, and her hair was pulled back into a simple, elegant puff. Her Stanford University hoodie was faded, a relic from her undergraduate days, and she wore simple black joggers and a pair of comfortable on-cloud sneakers. She looked less like a billionaire and more like a grad student flying home on a budget. "I'm sorry, Ms. Sterling," Cynthia said, her voice dripping with a practiced, insincere sympathy that did nothing to hide her impatience. Her name tag was pinned perfectly on her crisp uniform, and her blonde hair was shellacked into a perfect, immovable helmet. "I see the problem. Our system seems to have double-booked your seat in premium economy. It's a rare glitch, but it happens." Anna simply nodded, her expression calm. "Okay. What's the solution?" she asked, her voice low and even. She was bone-tired. The last 72 hours had been a blur of high-level coding and caffeine. All she wanted was a seat where she could sleep for 10 hours. Cynthia tapped her acrylic nails on the keyboard, her lips pursed in a show of deep concentration. "Well, the flight is completely full in economy and premium economy. Completely." She let the word hang in the air as if it were an insurmountable obstacle. "And business class?" Anna asked, glancing at the seating chart on Cynthia's screen, which clearly showed 3 empty pods in the business cabin. Cynthia's eyes flickered with annoyance. This was the moment she dreaded, and in a twisted way, savored. The moment where people with a sense of entitlement tried to leverage a computer error into a multi-$1,000 upgrade. She had a specific profile in her mind for these people, and the young woman in front of her fit it perfectly. Young, dressed down, probably bought the cheapest ticket possible and was now hoping for a lottery win. "Ma'am, our policy for operational upgrades is very strict." Cynthia began shifting into her role as the unassailable guardian of corporate policy. "We prioritize our Diamond Medallion members, then our Platinum, and so on. You are currently a Silver Medallion member." She said the word silver with the same disdain one might use for bronze or tin. "I understand," Anna said. "But it's the airline's error. And there are empty seats. It seems like the most logical solution." Behind Anna, a man in a rumpled but expensive-looking suit let out an audible sigh. "Is there a problem here? Some of us have a plane to catch." Cynthia gave the man an apologetic smile before turning her gaze back to Anna, her expression hardening. The other passenger assigned to seat 22D is a Diamond Medallion member with a full fare ticket. You are on a discounted corporate ticket. Her eyes scanned Anna's simple attire again, a silent judgment passing over her. "Look, the best I can do is offer you a middle seat in the main cabin, 38B. I can also give you a $200 flight voucher for the inconvenience." The offer was an insult wrapped in procedure. A middle seat for a 10-hour flight. Anna felt a familiar weariness settle over her, a feeling that had nothing to do with her lack of sleep. It was the exhaustion of constantly being underestimated, of having to prove her worth at every turn. "A middle seat isn't an equivalent accommodation for a premium economy seat I paid for," Anna stated calmly, keeping her voice steady. "And respectfully, there are 3 open business class seats. Upgrading me resolves the airline's mistake at no real cost to you." Cynthia's plastic smile tightened. This was defiance. She decided to end it. "Ma'am, those seats are reserved for our most valuable customers. They are not for handing out to just anyone who asks." The implication was clear. You are not a valuable customer. You are not just anyone. You are a nobody. The man in the suit, a Mr. Henderson, according to his boarding pass, stepped forward. "This is ridiculous. I've been a Diamond Medallion member for 10 years. My company spends millions with Apex." "What's the hold-up?" Cynthia's entire demeanor changed. She beamed at him. "Mr. Henderson, so sorry for the delay. We just have a small seating issue we're resolving." She then lowered her voice conspiratorially, yet loud enough for Anna to hear. "Some passengers try to take advantage of these little computer errors." Humiliation, hot and sharp, pricked at Anna's composure. She was being painted as a grifter, the woman whose software managed the logistics for giants like Amazon and Maersk was being dismissed as someone trying to scam a better seat. She could have ended it right there. One call. She had the personal cell number of Apex Global's chairman, David Lim, stored in her phone. They'd met at a tech summit in Davos. Lim had been practically begging for a meeting, desperate to get Nexus Logics to overhaul their disastrously outdated cargo logistics system, a system that was bleeding Apex millions of dollars a quarter. But Anna didn't operate that way. She believed in data. She believed in observing systems to see where they failed. And right now she was a data point in a spectacular system failure. "Fine," Anna said, her voice betraying none of her inner turmoil. "I'll take the voucher and seat 38B. Cynthia's smile was triumphant. She had won. She had protected the sanctity of the premium cabin from the unworthy. "Excellent choice," she chirped, tapping furiously at her keyboard. She printed out a new boarding pass and a voucher slip, handing them to Anna without making eye contact. "Please enjoy your flight with Apex Global." As Anna walked away, feeling the stares of the other passengers, Cynthia turned to Mr. Henderson. "Mr. Henderson," she said in her most charming voice, "as an apology for your wait, and as a thank you for your incredible loyalty, I'd like to offer you a complimentary upgrade to one of our Apex First Suites. Seat 2A is available." Mr. Henderson's face lit up. "Well, now that's more like it. See, that's how you treat a valued customer." Cynthia beamed a sense of righteous satisfaction, warming her. She had put the upstart in her place and rewarded the deserving. She had maintained order. She had no idea she had just signed the death warrant for her career and sent a multi-billion-dollar shockwave through the company she was so diligently protecting. Cynthia Davenport watched Anna Sterling's back as she disappeared into the jet bridge, a small, satisfying smirk playing on her lips. In her mind, she hadn't just done her job, she'd defended a principle. Her small counter at gate 142 was her kingdom, and she was its gatekeeper. It was her duty to separate the wheat from the chaff, the truly deserving from the opportunistic. Her life hadn't turned out the way she'd planned. She had dreamed of a corner office, a powerful career like the men and women she saw striding through the terminal every day. Instead, after a costly divorce and a string of dead-end jobs, she had found herself here in a polyester uniform, wielding the only power she had, the power of no. She judged people in seconds, a skill she'd honed over 15 years. The quality of their luggage, the brand of their watch, the confidence in their stride, it was all data. A cheap canvas bag, a faded college hoodie, a quiet voice. Data points that added up to not important. Cynthia prided herself on being a good judge of character. Mr. Henderson, with his loud complaints and his ostentatious Rolex, was exactly the kind of man who kept the airline in business. He was demanding, yes, but he was a somebody. The young woman was a nobody, and Cynthia's world was built on a clear hierarchy between the two. Giving the upgrade to Henderson wasn't just a perk, it was reinforcing the natural order of things. Her co-worker, a younger agent named Ben, leaned over after the last passenger had boarded. That was a bit rough, wasn't it? The system screwed up and she ended up with a middle seat in the back. Cynthia waved a dismissive hand. Please, Ben, you're too soft. You didn't see her eyes. She saw those empty seats on my screen and thought she'd hit the jackpot. It's a classic move. They feign politeness, but they're angling for a freebie the whole time. If I give it to her, what's the message? That our premium products are worthless, that anyone in a hoodie can just waltz into a $10,000 seat. I don't know, Ben said, shrugging. She seemed calm, and she did pay for premium economy. Technically, she was owed a better seat than 38B. She was owed a seat on the plane, and she got one. Cynthia snapped, her good mood evaporating. Plus a $200 voucher. That's more than fair. It's what the rule book says. She tapped a thick binder on the counter. I protect this airline's revenue. I don't give away 5-figure seats for free. End of story. Cynthia's bitterness ran deeper than just company policy. Her son Kevin was trying to get into USC's film school, and the tuition was astronomical. Every dollar she made, every extra shift she took was for him. The sight of someone who she perceived as a young, entitled freeloader, trying to get something for nothing, touched a raw nerve. Why should that girl get a lucky break when Cynthia had to work her fingers to the bone for every little thing? She started closing out the flight on her computer, her actions sharp and efficient. As she processed the upgrade for Mr. Henderson, a small flag popped up next to Anna Sterling's name in the system. It was a corporate travel note, usually something innocuous like vegetarian meal preference or VIP escort request. This one was different. It was just a single cryptic acronym, NL-ACCT, Alpha. Cynthia frowned. She'd never seen that designation before. ACCT Alpha sounded important, but the passenger didn't have the high-tier status to match. Probably some low-level employee from a big corporate account. The NL meant nothing to her. Shrugging it off as a clerical error, she clicked Override and finalized the flight manifest. The plane was buttoned up, ready for pushback. Problem solved. Kingdom secured. She glanced at the clock. Her shift was over. As she packed her bag, she thought about the $200 she had saved the company. It was a small victory, but it was hers. She imagined it as a tiny contribution to the company's bottom line, the same bottom line that paid her salary, the salary that would, with any luck, pay for her son's future. In her mind, She was a hero of fiscal responsibility, a loyal soldier for Apex Global. The truth was far more terrifying. That NL she had so casually dismissed stood for Nexus Logix, and ACCT Alpha was a top-secret designation created by the CEO's office. It was reserved for one person. It was an internal flag to treat this individual like royalty, to grant any request without question. It was an alert that the person holding the ticket was the single most important business prospect Apex Global had courted in a decade. Cynthia, in her quest to save the airline $200 and a seat she deemed too precious, had just insulted the one person who held the future of the entire company in the palm of her hand. But she didn't know that. As she walked out into the cool Los Angeles evening, she felt righteous and accomplished, utterly oblivious to the professional tidal wave that was already beginning to form, and was at that very moment hurtling directly towards her. The atmosphere inside the cabin of Apex Flight 110 was a carefully curated illusion of comfort. The soft blue lighting, the gentle orchestral boarding music, the flight attendants' welcoming smiles, it was all designed to soothe the inherent stress of air travel. For Anna Sterling, crammed into seat 38B, the illusion was shattered. To her left, the snoring salesman had already slumped against her shoulder, his breath smelling faintly of airport bar whiskey. To her right, a young mother was trying valiantly to entertain a toddler who had discovered the joy of repeatedly kicking Anna's leg. The promised 10 hours of sleep seemed like a distant, impossible dream. She pulled out her laptop, a sleek, custom-built machine with no logos. The cheap, spotty in-flight Wi-Fi was no match for her needs, so she tethered her connection to a small, unassuming black box in her backpack, a military-grade satellite uplink that gave her gigabit speeds anywhere on the planet. The mother glanced at the device, then at Anna's hoodie, and visibly scooted her child a little further away. Anna ignored it all. She put on her noise-cancelling headphones, and the world of the cramped cabin dissolved. Lines of complex code filled her screen. She wasn't just working, she was creating. This was her sanctuary. Here, in the elegant logic of programming, there was no prejudice, no judgment. Code was either efficient or it was not. It worked or it failed. It was pure. Up in the Apex First Suite, Mr. Henderson was making his presence known. He had complained that his pre-departure champagne wasn't Krug, but a lesser vintage. He'd sent back his amenity kit because he preferred a different brand of moisturizer. Now he was loudly berating a junior flight attendant named Maria because his filet mignon was, in his expert opinion, cooked medium well instead of medium rare. "This is unacceptable," he boomed, his voice carrying through the hushed cabin. "I paid a lot of money for this ticket. Well, my company did, and I expect a certain standard." Maria, barely 22 and new to international routes, was on the verge of tears. The senior purser, a calm, distinguished man in his 50s, named David Chen, intervened smoothly. "Mr. Henderson, my sincerest apologies. Allow me to get the chef to prepare another steak for you immediately. Can I perhaps get you a glass of our 25-year-old single malt while you wait?" Placated Henderson grunted his assent. David steered Maria towards the galley, giving her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry about him," he said quietly. "Some people think the price of a ticket includes the right to be a monster. I'll handle it." David had been flying for 30 years. He had seen it all. He had served princesses and politicians, rock stars and CEOs. Like Cynthia at the gate, he was also a keen observer of people, but his observations were rooted in empathy, not suspicion. He'd noticed the quiet woman in the Stanford hoodie during boarding, how she had navigated the aisle with a kind of weary grace, her face betraying nothing. He'd also overheard Henderson bragging to another passenger about his free upgrade. The pieces didn't quite fit. Later, during a service run in the main cabin, David passed by row 38. He saw Anna's laptop screen, and what he saw made him stop dead in his tracks. It wasn't a spreadsheet or a movie. It was a flowing river of multicolored code, impossibly complex, layered with algorithms he couldn't begin to comprehend. But he recognized the interface. His nephew, a software engineer at Google, used a similar one. This wasn't someone checking emails. This was high-level architecture. Then his eyes caught a name in the comment section of the code, A. Sterling. Final check on Nexus Prime algorithm. Sterling. The name rang a bell. David was an avid reader of business and tech journals. He prided himself on staying current. He pulled out his personal tablet in the privacy of the galley and typed Sterling Tech CEO into the search bar. The results hit him like a physical blow. The first image was a photo from the cover of Forbes, the alchemist of algorithms. How Anna Sterling quietly built a $14 billion empire and changed the world. The woman in the photo was poised and professional, dressed in a sharp blazer, but there was no mistaking it. It was the woman in 38B. His blood ran cold. He scrolled frantically, his horror growing with every headline. Nexus Logic CEO Anna Sterling, the Pentagon's new secret weapon in logistics. Apex Global in high stakes talks with Sterling's Nexus Logics. The final article was a piece in the Wall Street Journal from 2 days ago, detailing Apex's desperate need for a technological overhaul of its cargo division, a division losing hundreds of millions of dollars a year. The article explicitly named Nexus Logics as the only viable savior, and mentioned that the airline's future could hinge on securing a partnership with its elusive, brilliant CEO. David looked from his tablet to the manifest in his hand. Passenger Sterling Anna. Seat 38B. Original seat 22D. Involuntarily downgraded at gate. He felt sick. The gate agent hadn't just made a mistake. She had committed an act of corporate suicide and taken the whole airline with her. The obnoxious man in 2A, currently enjoying his second perfectly cooked steak, had been upgraded. The billionaire architect of their potential salvation was wedged in a middle seat by the toilets. David took a deep breath, his professional composure kicking in. He walked calmly to the front of the plane and knocked on the cockpit door. The captain needed to know. The ground needed to know. This was no longer a customer service issue. This was a Category 1 emergency. The storm Cynthia Davenport had unwittingly created at the gate was now at 35,000 feet over the Atlantic, about to become a hurricane. The cockpit of the Boeing 777 was an oasis of calm professionalism. Captain Eva Rostova, a veteran pilot with a no-nonsense demeanor, listened intently as David explained the situation in hushed, urgent tones. Her co-pilot Mark stared at the tablet displaying the Forbes article, his mouth slightly agape. "Let me get this straight, Captain Rostova," said her voice dangerously quiet. "We have Anna Sterling, the CEO of Nexus Logics, sitting in a coach middle seat, while some loudmouth salesman is sipping top-shelf scotch in first class on a free upgrade." "That is the situation," Captain David confirmed, his face grim. Rostova swore under her breath, a sharp, concise curse. She knew exactly how important the Nexus Logics deal was. CEO Robert Chen had sent out a company-wide memo about it, stressing that it was a transformational opportunity for Apex Global. This wasn't just bad PR, it was a potential company killer. Right, she said, her mind snapping into crisis management mode. "Mark, get on the sat phone to the operations center in Chicago. Use the emergency channel. I want them to patch us through to executive services. Tell them to wake up whoever they need to wake up. I want a full report from the LAX gate supervisor on my desk before we land. I want to know the name of the agent responsible. I want to know everything." Mark nodded, already reaching for the satellite phone. David Rostova continued, turning back to the purser. Your mission is to make Ms. Sterling as comfortable as possible without appearing to panic. Go back there. Be discreet. Offer her one of the crew rest bunks. Offer her the entire first-class cabin if you have to. Whatever she wants, she gets. And for God's sake, keep that Henderson character away from her. David nodded. I'll handle it, Captain. He returned to the cabin, his heart pounding. This was the most delicate passenger interaction of his career. He approached row 38 and knelt beside Anna's seat, waiting patiently until she looked up from her screen and removed her headphones. Ms. Sterling, he said softly. My name is David Chen. I'm the purser on this flight. I am so terribly sorry for the inconvenience you experienced at the gate. It was an unacceptable error on our part. Anna looked at him, her expression unreadable. It's fine, she said simply. Your colleague was just following her rules. It's not fine, Ma'am, David insisted gently. We have several empty crew rest bunks with full lay-flat beds. We would be honored if you would accept one for the remainder of the flight. You could work or sleep in total privacy. Anna considered it for a moment. The offer was tempting, but she also saw the flicker of panic in David's eyes. They knew who she was now. The system was correcting itself, but the damage was done. Creating a scene by moving would only draw more attention, something she abhorred. Thank you, David, that's a very kind offer, she said, her voice softening. But I'm fine right here. I'm deep into my work and I'd prefer not to be disturbed. David was stunned. He had expected anger, demands, a triumphant, I told you so. Instead, he got quiet, polite refusal. This woman who held the fate of his company in her hands was more concerned with finishing her work than claiming the privileges she was owed. It was a display of humility and focus that was more intimidating than any outburst could have been. Of course, Miss Sterling, he stammered. Please, if there is anything, a meal from the first-class menu, a drink, anything at all, you just let me know. She gave him a small, genuine smile. Actually, a bottle of water would be great. Thank you. As David retreated to the galley to fetch the water, the reality of the situation crashed down on him. They had not just insulted a VIP, they had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of power. They were used to power that announced itself with loud demands and flashy watches. Anna Sterling's power was different. It was quiet, self-contained, and absolute. It didn't need to be validated by a business-class seat because it was already busy changing the world from a middle seat in coach. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, the message from Captain Rostova was ripping through the corporate structure of Apex Global like a lightning bolt. Phones began ringing in the pre-dawn hours in Chicago and New York. Low-level operations managers, jolted from sleep, frantically escalated the call up the chain of command. The name Anna Sterling and the phrase involuntarily downgraded were spoken in panicked whispers. In Los Angeles, Cynthia Davenport was fast asleep, dreaming of her son's bright future. She was blissfully unaware that her name was now attached to a red-flagged incident report, rocketing its way to the highest echelons of the company. The whispers at 30,000 feet were becoming a roar on the ground. The quiet storm was about to make landfall. The sun had not yet risen over Lake Michigan when the call reached Liam Neeson, the Executive Vice President of North American Operations for Apex Global. The name was a source of endless jokes, but there was nothing funny about the frantic voice of the night duty director on the other end of the line. Liam, we have a code red. A real one. Liam sat up in bed, instantly awake. A code red meant a crash, a hijacking, or a catastrophic security breach. Talk to me, John. What happened? Flight 110 LAX to Heathrow. We have Anna Sterling on board. Liam's mind went blank for a second. The Anna Sterling. Okay. Is she okay? Is there a medical emergency? No, she's fine. Physically, John said, his voice strained. "Liam, we downgraded her. At the gate. She's in a middle seat in economy." Silence. Liam felt a cold dread creep up his spine, a feeling worse than if he'd been told the plane had lost an engine. An engine could be fixed. This was something else entirely. "Say that again," Liam said, his voice barely a whisper. John repeated the story, his words painting a picture of corporate malpractice so profound it was almost surreal. The double booking, the polite request, the denial, the upgrade given to someone else, the name of the gate agent, Cynthia Davenport. "Get me everything on this Davenport," Liam commanded, swinging his legs out of bed and heading for his home office. "I want her entire service record. I want a transcript of the gate's check-in notes. I want to know why the Ayalitea Alpha flag on Sterling's profile was ignored, and get a team ready. We need to meet the flight when it lands in Heathrow. No, scratch that. I need CEO Chen's chief of staff on the line. Now." The news traveled up the corporate ladder with breathtaking speed. By the time Robert Chen, the slick, impeccably dressed CEO of Apex Global, stepped onto his personal treadmill for his 6 a.m. workout, his world was already beginning to crumble. His chief of staff, a perpetually anxious man named Arthur, delivered the news with the grim finality of a battlefield medic. Chen stopped treadmilling, the sudden silence in his penthouse gym deafening. She's where Chen asked, his voice calm, but his eyes wide with horror. "Seat 38B, Sir Arthur confirmed. Robert Chen wasn't a logistics expert. He was a finance guy, a deal maker. He had risen to the top on his ability to charm investors and cut costs. The Nexus Logix deal was meant to be his crowning achievement. It was the masterstroke that would solve the airline's biggest financial drain, its ancient, inefficient cargo division, and cement his legacy. He had spent the last 6 months relentlessly pursuing Anna Sterling, deploying every ounce of his legendary charm through back channels and intermediaries, all to secure the meeting that was scheduled for tomorrow in London. And his own company, his own meticulously trained staff, had just metaphorically spat in her face. Who was the agent, Chen demanded. Cynthia Davenport, 15-year veteran, based at LAX. Her service record is average. A few commendations for cost saving, a few complaints about rudeness. She seems to be a stickler for the rules. A stickler for the rules, Chen repeated the words, tasting like ash. She's a stickler for a $200 voucher rule, and she's cost us a $50 billion partnership. He began to pace his mind, racing, cycling through the stages of executive panic, denial, rage, damage, control. "What's our play?" Robert Arthur asked timidly. "We get ahead of it," Chen declared, his deal-maker instincts kicking in. "I'll call David Lim, apologize personally. We'll meet her at the gate at Heathrow. A full honor guard. Top executives. We'll have a car waiting to take her directly to the penthouse suite at the Savoy on us. We'll send 1,000 orchids. We'll donate $1 million to a charity of her choice. We will bury her in apologies and perks." He paused, a thought striking him. "And Davenport? What about her?" "She'll be suspended pending a full investigation, of course," Arthur said. Chen shook his head. "No, not yet. I don't want it to look like a knee-jerk reaction. Let's frame it differently." A sly, cunning look entered his eyes. "We find this Henderson character who got the upgrade. We leak his name to the press, make him the villain, the obnoxious entitled elite. And Davenport, for now we spin her as a diligent employee who was trying to protect the company's assets, but made a mistake in judgment under pressure. We control the narrative. It was a classic corporate strategy. Deflect, spin, and sacrifice someone else, if necessary. Chen was a master at it. He still believed he could fix this, that the sheer weight of his apology and the luxury he could offer would smooth over this unfortunate little incident. He completely misjudged the woman he was dealing with. Anna Sterling didn't care about orchids or penthouse suites. She cared about systems, and she had just discovered a catastrophic bug in his. As Chen's team scrambled to assemble a welcome party of epic proportions at Heathrow, an alert chimed on Anna's laptop. It was an automated notification from a Nexus Logic subroutine she had designed. The program, codenamed Watchtower, constantly scanned global financial and logistics news, flagging anything relevant to her company or its partners. The alert was for a small article on an obscure aviation blog. The headline read, "Apex Global Stock Ticks Up on Renewed Rumors of Nexus Logic's Partnership." The article quoted an anonymous Apex executive who boasted about the airline's imminent technological leap forward and praised the company's culture of fiscal discipline and operational excellence at all levels. Anna read the words, fiscal discipline, and a small, mirthless smile touched her lips. She looked around the cramped economy cabin at the crying toddler and the snoring salesman. She thought of Cynthia Davenport, the diligent gatekeeper of a broken system, and Robert Chen, the CEO, who was about to learn a very expensive lesson about the difference between cost and value. The unraveling wasn't just happening at Apex Global. It was happening in Anna's mind, too. Her initial feelings of humiliation and frustration were crystallizing into something colder, sharper, a case study. The meeting in London was no longer just about a potential partnership. It was now going to be a final exam. And Apex Global had no idea they were about to fail. The Apex Global boardroom on the top floor of their London headquarters was designed to project power. A vast mahogany table stretched across the room, polished to a mirror shine. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking panorama of the city skyline. On the table, chilled bottles of San Pellegrino stood like soldiers next to custom-printed leather folios. Robert Chen stood at the head of the table, adjusting his silk tie for the 10th time. He had barely slept. His carefully orchestrated welcoming committee at Heathrow had been a failure. Anna Sterling had deplaned politely, but firmly declined their offer of a car and suite, and disappeared into a waiting, unassuming Tesla that had picked her up from the regular arrivals area. She had sent a single terse email, "Mr. Chen, I will see you at the scheduled meeting time." No further accommodations are necessary. The lack of drama was more terrifying than any outburst. Chen had spent the last 24 hours in a state of high anxiety drilling his team. We do not mention the flight he had instructed them. Not a word. We are here to talk about the future, not the past. We will wow her with our presentation. We will show her the full force of our hospitality. We will make her forget that anything ever happened. His executive team, a collection of grim-faced men and one woman, nodded in unison. The mood was less like a business meeting and more like a preoperative briefing for a surgery with a low chance of success. At precisely 10:00 a.m., the boardroom doors opened. Chen's assistant announced Miss Anna Sterling. Anna walked in alone. She was dressed in a simple but impeccably tailored dark grey suit, a stark contrast to the hoodie and joggers from the flight. Her hair was styled elegantly, and her face, now well rested, was calm and composed. She carried a single slim tablet. She radiated an aura not of wealth but of profound competence. Chen rushed forward, his hand outstretched, a massive, practiced smile plastered on his face. "Ms. Sterling, Anna. What an absolute honor. Robert Chen, we are so thrilled to finally have you here." Anna shook his hand. Her grip was firm, her eyes direct. "Mr. Chen," she said, her voice cool and even. "Thank you for seeing me." She took a seat at the table, not at the designated spot next to Chen, but at the opposite end, creating a vast expanse of polished mahogany between them. The move was a clear statement. This was not a negotiation between partners. It was an evaluation. Chen's smile faltered for a second before he recovered. Well, let's get started, shall we? My team and I have prepared a presentation that I believe will showcase the incredible synergy between Apex Global and Nexus Logics. For the next 45 minutes, Chen's team went through their polished slideshow. They talked about market share, projected revenue, and operational integration. They used all the right buzzwords: synergy, paradigm shift, future forward. Anna listened patiently, her expression never changing. She didn't open her tablet. She didn't take a single note. When they were finished, an expectant silence filled the room. Impressive graphics, Anna said her first words since sitting down. Your marketing department is clearly very skilled. Chen chuckled a little too loudly. We certainly think so. So Anna, what are your initial thoughts? Are you as excited about this potential as we are? Anna leaned forward slightly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mr. Chen, she began. Nexus Logics is not a software company. We are a systems analysis company. The software is just a tool. Our real product is truth. We find the weaknesses in a system, the points of failure, and we expose them. Before I partner with any company, I need to understand their core operating system. Not their computers. Their people. A nervous sweat began to bead on Chen's forehead. I had an interesting data-gathering opportunity on my flight here. She continued, her voice remaining placid. Your airline's booking system had a glitch, a minor error, the kind of thing that happens. But the response to that error was illuminating. It provided me with a perfect case study of your company's culture. The executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Chen held up a hand. Anna, please, about the flight. It was a terrible, inexcusable mistake. An isolated incident involving a single employee who is being dealt with. Was she? Anna interrupted, her voice cutting through his spin. Was she a single, isolated employee? Or was she a product of the system you've built? A system that incentivizes a stickler for the rules mentality over common sense. A system where an employee believes that saving the theoretical cost of an upgrade is more important than solving a customer's problem. A system that teaches its staff to judge a person's value based on their clothing and status tier rather than their character. She finally picked up her tablet. With a flick of her finger, she projected an image onto the large screen at the front of the room. It was a complex flowchart. This, she said, is a map of the decision-making process your gate agent, Ms. Davenport, likely followed. It's based on your own internal procedure manuals, which are publicly available. Notice this branch here. If passenger is low-tier status, offer minimal compensation to protect premium cabin revenue. It's a flawed directive. It prioritizes short-term asset protection over long-term customer value. My software would have flagged that as a critical failure point in your operational logic. Chen was speechless. She hadn't just come to a meeting. She had come with a full diagnostic report on his company's soul. The problem isn't that your employee made a mistake, Anna said, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces in the room. The problem is that she did exactly what you've trained her to do. She executed her programming perfectly. Your programming is the problem, Mr. Chen. She stood up. There is one more thing. I'd like to speak with Ms. Davenport. Arthur, the chief of staff, paled. Ms. Sterling, I'm not sure that's possible. Or appropriate, I have her right here, a voice said from the doorway. It was Chen's assistant. Standing behind her was Cynthia Davenport, who had been flown to London overnight. Chen had planned to bring her in at the end of the meeting for a carefully staged public apology, believing it would be a gesture of transparency that Anna would appreciate. It was another catastrophic miscalculation. Cynthia walked into the room, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. She looked at the powerful executives, the panoramic view, and then she saw Anna Sterling standing at the head of the table like a queen in judgment. And in that instant, she knew. The full, soul-crushing weight of her mistake finally crashed down upon her. The collision wasn't just in the boardroom. It was inside Cynthia's own mind, as the world she thought she understood shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Cynthia Davenport stood paralyzed in the grand doorway of the boardroom, the hushed, conditioned air feeling heavy and suffocating. Her Apex Global uniform, usually a source of pride and authority, now felt like a cheap costume, marking her as an outsider in this realm of immense power. The world seemed to slow down the panoramic view of London's skyline, looking like a painted backdrop for a stage play of her own demise. Her eyes wide, with a dawning, sickening comprehension, darted from Robert Chen's ashen, terrified face to the woman seated at the far end of the table. It was her, the woman from the gate. But the exhausted, unassuming figure in the faded Stanford hoodie had vanished. In her place sat a woman radiating a quiet, absolute authority that dwarfed everyone else in the room, including the CEO. She was dressed in a dark, exquisitely tailored suit, and her calm, analytical gaze held no malice but something far more terrifying assessment. In that silent, stretching moment, Cynthia understood. The universe hadn't just played a trick on her. It had handed her the tools to dismantle her own life, and she had used them with terrifying efficiency. Robert Chen, seeing his last, desperate strategy implode, scrambled to regain control. "Ah, Miss Sterling, this is the employee I mentioned. Cynthia Davenport. She flew in from Los Angeles. Cynthia, I know you are deeply, profoundly sorry for the misunderstanding at the gate. Why don't you tell Ms. Sterling that his voice was strained, a frantic plea, disguised as a corporate directive. He was still trying to follow his script, to force this horrifying reality into a manageable narrative of a simple mistake and a sincere apology." Anna gestured to the empty chair directly across the vast, polished expanse of the table. "Please, Miss Davenport, have a seat." Her voice was not unkind, but it carried an unnerving neutrality, the voice of a scientist observing a specimen. Shaking, Cynthia moved towards the chair, her legs feeling unsteady. She perched on the edge of the plush leather, afraid that if she relaxed for even a moment, she would shatter. I am so sorry," Cynthia began, her voice a choked whisper. She looked at Anna, her mind struggling to reconcile the two images. "I made a mistake. I didn't know who you were." Anna's expression didn't change, but her eyes seemed to look straight through Cynthia, analyzing the faulty logic within. And that Ms. Davenport is the single most critical data point in this entire analysis. You didn't know who I was. And because of that absence of data, you fell back on a different set of inputs. My clothes, my age, my race, my gender. You made a judgment based on a deeply flawed and biased algorithm running in your head, an algorithm that your corporate culture has clearly encouraged. She shifted her gaze to Chen, and the neutrality in her voice was replaced by a cold, sharp precision. For the last hour, your team has been talking about synergy and integration. But Nexus Logix is not a software vendor, Mr. Chen. We are a systems analysis company. The software we design is merely a tool to execute our primary function, to find the truth of a system. We don't just patch leaks. We expose the foundational cracks that cause them. And before I integrate my company's technology with anyone, I conduct a full diagnostic of their core operating system. Not their computer networks, their people, their culture. The executives around the table who had been attempting to look invisible now seemed to shrink in their seats. My journey here on Flight 110 was an unplanned but incredibly effective stress test of your system. Anna continued, her voice unwavering. The initial problem, a double-booked seat, was a minor bug. Trivial. But the way your system in the form of Ms. Davenport responded to that bug was catastrophic. She followed a protocol that is fundamentally broken. A protocol that taught her that a loud man with a Rolex is a valuable customer, and a quiet woman in a hoodie is a liability to be managed. You trained her to believe that enforcing a rigid, nonsensical rule to protect the sanctity of a business-class seat was a greater priority than logical problem-solving and customer retention. She finally picked up her tablet. With a surgeon's precision, she projected a complex diagram onto the boardroom screen. This is a behavioral flowchart based on your own procedural manuals and the actions I observed. Note the branches. Note the incentive structures. Your system rewards cost-saving microaggressions and punishes compassionate, logical exceptions. The issue isn't that you have one bad employee, Mr. Chen. The issue is that Ms. Davenport was, in fact, a good employee. She executed her programming flawlessly. The fatal flaw isn't in the agent, it's in the architect of the system. It's in you. Chen opened his mouth to protest, to offer excuses, apologies, anything. But Anna held up a hand, silencing him. I have analyzed the data. She said the words landing with the finality of a judge's gavel. And the conclusion is unequivocal. A partnership between Nexus Logics and Apex Global is systematically impossible. Your cultural infrastructure is incompatible with our own. Your foundation is riddled with the dry rot of prejudice, arrogance, and flawed logic. If this is how your organization treats a multi-billion-dollar prospect, I can only imagine the daily indignities you inflict upon your regular customers. Therefore, Nexus Logics is officially terminating all partnership negotiations, effective immediately. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a $50 billion opportunity evaporating into thin air. Then Anna did something unexpected. She looked back at the trembling figure of Cynthia Davenport. And for the record, I do not want you to be fired, Miss Davenport. A flicker of desperate, confused hope appeared in Cynthia's eyes. Chen looked equally baffled. No. Anna continued, a steely edge to her voice. Firing you is the easy way out. It's a clean, simple PR move that allows Mr. Chen and this board to amputate the limb and claim the body is healed. It allows you to become a scapegoat. I have a more constructive suggestion. I suggest you become a ghost. Your story in all its humiliating detail should be lesson 1 in every new hire orientation and every management training seminar at this company for as long as this company exists. You should become a mandatory case study, the living, breathing embodiment of the cost of unconscious bias. That is a far more effective and I imagine far more painful form of justice. It was an act of strategic genius disguised as mercy. She was denying Chen his easy sacrifice, forcing the company to live with its failure in perpetuity. With that, Anna stood up, collected her tablet, and walked towards the door. She paused as she passed Robert Chen, who looked like a man who had just watched his entire life's work burn to the ground. You are in the business of moving people and things from one point to another, Mr. Chen, she said, her voice now barely above a whisper, yet carrying across the silent room. But you have forgotten the most fundamental principle of your own industry. Everything and everyone has value. Your catastrophic failure is that you have built a system completely incapable of recognizing it. She walked out without a backward glance, leaving behind the ruins of a boardroom, a company, and several careers. The aftermath was not just swift, it was a corporate bloodbath. Karma's balance sheet came due. Before Anna's car had even cleared the London city limits, the story was on the Wall Street Journal's wire service. The market's reaction was savage. Apex Global's stock went into freefall, a digital avalanche of red. By the end of the day, the airline had hemorrhaged over $4 billion in shareholder value, the market's brutal valuation of a single act of prejudice. The board of directors convened an emergency meeting. Robert Chen was unceremoniously fired, his carefully constructed legacy obliterated. His golden parachute was rescinded, citing a clause for gross mismanagement, causing catastrophic brand damage. And Cynthia Davenport. In the corporate panic, Anna's nuanced, cruel wish was ignored. Nuance is a luxury for the stable, not for the collapsing. Cynthia was terminated via a cold, impersonal email, citing failure to adhere to core company values. The irony was lost on no one but the executives who wrote it. Her 15 years of service, her pension, her identity all erased. She became a pariah, the face of a corporate scandal, so public that no other airline would even consider her application. The dream of her son's education, the very thing that fueled her bitterness, dissolved into an impossible fantasy. 2 weeks later, as Apex Global's stock struggled to find its floor, Delta Airlines and Nexus Logics jointly announced a record-breaking exclusive partnership. The press release was a masterclass in corporate shade, praising their new partner's visionary leadership and a shared commitment to a culture of respect, innovation, and data-driven equity. The market roared its approval. The story became a legend, a modern fable taught in business schools. For Anna, however, it was never a fable. As she sat in her own office, mapping out the revolutionary logistics system that would redefine her new partner's global operations, she felt no triumph, only a quiet, weary resolve. It was never about revenge. It was, and always had been, about fixing the broken system. One flawed algorithm at a time. This story serves as a powerful and chilling reminder that the biggest decisions in our lives and businesses aren't always made in the boardroom. Sometimes they're made at a boarding gate based on a fleeting glance and a lifetime of hidden biases. Anna Sterling's quiet dignity in the face of disrespect and Cynthia Davenport's devastating fall from grace highlight a crucial truth. True power isn't loud and demanding, it's observant and decisive. The world is full of brilliant people in simple clothes and empty suits in positions of power. The wisdom to know the difference is everything. What do you think? Was Cynthia a victim of a flawed corporate culture, or did she get the karma she deserved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that expose the truth hiding in plain sight. Thank you for listening.